Hi, I'm Dominic and welcome to the Secret Staff Meeting, which is where we have big conversations about education. So the format of the conversation is always the same. First question, what were you like at school? Second question, what's the point of school? And then the third question, which is, give me 3 things that you wish was taught in school. And we're looking for big conversations, big topics there. Today we have...
Peter Bunzl.
Perfect, so that's your name. Where'd you come from?
I come from London. I live in North London now, but originally from South London.
Right, okay, and you've got that South London thing that you can really hear that. And so I've done my research on you, and we've got down here that you are an author, so give us a quick rundown on that.
Yeah, I write books for children, middle grade books, which is for children 9+ years old, and I've finished writing a trilogy of books called the Cogheart Adventures, which is an adventure series set in Victorian England, and there's airships and there's mechanical people and mechanical animals, and there's lots of sort of dastardly villains and adventure and daring do and mysteries to be solved. Right. And there's 3 characters in the story.
So this is the one. Yeah. This is the one that everybody knows, isn't it? Because this is the one that's exploding, kind of social media, really popular with teachers and classrooms. And have you been surprised by the level of success?
Yeah, quite surprised really. I mean, it took a while to sort of sell the book, so you know, and people at the time were saying, oh, you know, kids don't really read steampunk stories. And so when the book came out, you know, it sort of it had a really good start. It was Waterstone's Book of the Month in August 2016, and they really loved it and they really pushed the book. All the booksellers were pushing it, and they made, you know, beautiful displays. I think that's also a part of why it's popular, because you know the cover and the design of the book is really
illustrations
beautiful.
Are amazing.
Illustrations are nice.
Yeah.
So that was a start, and then teachers sort of took it up from there and sort of got excited about the book, and it just grew and grew. And so now, you know, I still get lots of people on Twitter kind of wanting to talk to me about the book and telling me that they're reading it.
You have plans for guided reading, don't you, as well, on your website?
Yeah, there's
we can put the link up for that later.
There's lots of sort of guided reading stuff that one of the teachers who loved the book did for me, which was awesome. And then there's stuff that Usborne created, worksheets for classrooms, and then there's also sort of stuff that I created, little animation things and stuff like that to do with characters. Yeah.
Well, that takes us on nicely to the second thing I found out about you, which was the fact that you are like a filmmaker animator.
Yes.
Would you split those up, or you would say that you are a animator filmmaker? How would you do that?
I guess I would say I'm an animator filmmaker.
Right.
I worked in animation for about 10 years, and I would work commercially for people, and then I would also make my own films as well. So
but you have done straight films as well, haven't you? Like what's the difference? What would you call it? Like traditional films, let's say.
I've done some traditional filming, but most of the stuff that I made was kind of combination, little bits of animation, and little bits of live action. So it had a bit of both in. And
there was one
commercially, I was working for other people, just doing animation.
Right, so with that sort of advertising stuff, was it?
Yeah, advertising, children's telly shows, promos, stuff like that.
So a good sort of, what do they call it, sort of training ground for you, really, I suppose?
Yeah, it was definitely a great training ground for sort of creating your own stories and telling things visually, telling things succinctly and in a kind of interesting way.
I mean, talking about an interesting way, it was one of the live action films you did about an elderly man who got stuck on the ceiling.
Yeah, that's one of the films.
Yeah.
That took quite a long time. That was a crazy labour of love to make that film.
Sounds like
it was insane, because I was working on a children's TV show at the same time, and I was trying to shoot the film and get it made.
Right.
And it was a bit mad, but yeah, it was fun to do. I learned a lot about directing. I learned that I don't want to be a live action film director because it's so stressful.
Because you have done a bit of that though, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done.
And you found it was really intense.
Yeah, I found it intense, and I'm not a massively gregarious person, so it's quite difficult to sort of direct people. But I love writing the story. I loved writing short film stories and coming up with ideas and coming up with how we were going to make them. And I think if I had another idea that lent itself to that, I would give it another go.
And as the animation side of things, do you find that you have more control over that sort of side of things, and so it's easier than live action for your sort of personality?
Yeah, it's quite similar to writing animation. You're sitting in a room and you're by yourself and you're with the characters and you have to make them do something to sort of move the story forward. And there is, and people say no, people don't believe it's similar, but it is really similar. I think you get given a scene and you have to sort of work out what the characters are doing in that scene and how they're interacting with each other and what they're feeling, and you have to portray that. And you're just doing it in a slightly different medium of drawing or on the computer animation, whereas you're doing it with words when you're writing it.
And I did watch Mind Games, which is a short animation of yours, about 3 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that won one of the Virgin Shorts Awards.
You didn't win the Virgin. It was shortlisted.
Right.
It was like down to the final 8 or 10 or something.
That's still pretty impressive.
It was good. It was fun.
I watched that. It reminded me of the Animatrix. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah, I have.
It really reminded me of that. I thought it was great, and I thought there was there's quite a sort of dystopian theme with that one.
Yeah, it's very dystopian.
Yeah.
Very dark and kind of horrible story about this guy who's in prison and he's having his brain experimented on, and they're kind of seeing his dreams or seeing his thoughts, what he's thinking, and they're kind of, and then he meets this woman in the dream.
Number 195.
Yeah.
Is there something significance to that number?
No, just random numbers. He meets this woman in the dream and they kind of dance together and have this moment, and then he's taken back to prison, and then he sees her, he catches a glimpse of her in the corridor as he's being taken back to his cell. So it's really dark, it's quite a dark film, really.
Yeah.
All of those films, a few of those films are quite dark. Darker than you'd probably be allowed to go in a children's book, because you can't have a kind of down ending like that. You have to have a little bit of hope at the end. Yeah,
of course. And so one of the things I thought was really interesting was about how your father was an antique dealer.
Yeah.
And so if we just stick with that for a second, your father was an antique dealer. Is that why you have a lot of these mechanical figures then in your work? Or not at all?
No, he didn't. He didn't sell mechanical figures.
Right.
But he sold some clocks. He went through a time when he was selling clocks, and we had a few clocks in our house. So we had like a big old grandfather clock, and it was so big inside you could open the door in the front and hide in there, but you could play hide and seek. And me and my sister used to, when we were playing hide and seek, we used to hide in that clock.
Right.
And the pendulum didn't actually work, I don't think. So the pendulum was in there, but it wasn't working, so you could hide inside it.
Right.
And then he had lots of other had a really amazing wall clock that was kind of with a wooden surround that hung on the wall, and a few other bits and pieces, a few other clocks and stuff like that. So I think when I was thinking of Thaddeus, who's Robert's father in the story, who is a clockmaker, and he has this little shop full of interesting clocks. And subconsciously, I think I was thinking of my dad's shop and sort of what it felt like to be in my dad's shop.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
And also your mother was a costume designer?
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she worked on lots of big shows in the 70s and 80s. Like she worked on Octopussy, Live and Let Die, Rollerball.
That's incredible.
What else? The Slipper and the Rose, which is a pretty awful 70s version of Cinderella.
Right.
And you can say all of those to kids and they won't know what they are. And then the other thing she worked on was Postman Pat, which is the only one I can say to kids and they'll know it. So I always, if they ask me, that's the one I always say.
Oh, nice. So do you? I mean, there's a lot of influence from from both of your parents in the work that you do now. Yeah,
my mum from animation, definitely, and I guess my dad was creative as well, but in a different way, just collecting, more of a collector of things. But from being a kid and seeing my mum go onto film sets and going onto sort of animation sets, I remember we went when I was quite young to see them making Postman Pat, and it was the very first series, and the director was there, and my mum had been making costumes for the show for about 6 months, so he kept bringing around these little puppets in shoe boxes, which were like they're made from foam and metal and stuff, and he'd have a drawing of what the costume would look like, and my mum would have to make the costume. So I'd been seeing the puppets, and then one day we went to the studio and we saw them all on the set with their little houses where they lived, you know, and we saw the storyboards and stuff. So start to realise that that they're going to come to life. And then he showed us, we went upstairs and he had a Moviola, which is an old machine where you can run film through. And he showed us like a little clip from Postman Pat of all the characters moving and walking about. So that was like one of my earliest memories of animation, and sort of realising that all of these things are created by people, and they make up the story and they make up the characters, and they kind of put it all together to create a movie, you know, and bring it to life. And
one of the things that I thought was interesting about the fact that you started as a sort of filmmaker animator, because you went to the National Film and Television School, didn't you? And you've got an MA. Congratulations.
Thanks.
But one of the things that, because we work in, we obviously work in like primary English and filmmaking, and I think a lot of the time people don't necessarily see the relationship between filmmaking and writing. They think it's just messing around with the camera. But have you found that your filmmaking background has influenced your writing? And because we're always communicating to people just how much writing goes into making a film, making an animation, because it's 90% of the work half the time, I would think.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I think there's such a similarity between not just screenwriting, but every single stage of filmmaking to writing a book, you know. Specifically, I think something like when you're writing the book, it's a bit like shooting the movie, and you're just you're writing in your mind's eye, and you're writing over what you need. You write more than you need, and some of it will be rubbish. And then when you're editing the book, it's so similar to film editing, because you're doing the same thing. You know, you're chopping out the scene and you're trying to make it flow nicely. And
are you always visualizing what a scene looks like? Because I think that's one of the strengths of filmmaking, is when you go through that video production process, is that you have to imagine what it looks like, and that influences your writing and how the tone that you might write in, or the speed that you might be the pace that you're setting. And
I think so. I think about it like that. Like, I think about it like you would shoot a scene in a movie. So you'd start off, you know, with a bit of description of what the town looks like, and that's kind of the equivalent of a big wide shot. And then you're going in closer, and you have a moment with the character, and you see what they're doing, and then they say something, and then that's kind of the equivalent of a mid shot or whatever. And then you have like point of view shots where you know, exactly the same as you would in a movie, where the character's like picking up something, feelings, and the turning a key in the door, and you start, and like I was saying, you start editing. When you're editing, you're putting those sentences in different places in the paragraph to see how it's going to fit together to make the image stronger, and that's kind of how you do it. But the one thing that's great about writing that you don't have in film is you have all of those other senses, like smell and touch and personal, you know, the interior thoughts of the character, the interior feelings of the character. You don't really have those in film, and you have to kind of surmise them from what the actors do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had 1,001 questions really, but I think in the interest of time, we'll keep going. So obviously we've got an audience of teachers here. So what were you like at school? And let's think about primary school, because that's kind of the majority of our audience.
Yeah, at primary school, I was quite a shy kid. I wasn't so self-confident with other kids. I don't think I made friends particularly easy, but I enjoyed being at school, and I loved kind of all the creative subjects, and I got on well with the teachers, and I kind of enjoyed interacting in class and stuff like that. So,
were you aware that you had a skill for writing, or was that something that hadn't yet been developed, or how was that?
I've still got some of the stories that I wrote in primary school, because my dad kept them, because he kept everything, because he's kind of good like that. And yeah, they're alright. They're quite good, you know.
Were you aware of that in school? Of like, oh, you know, you're one of the better writers in class, or did you just feel, you know, fairly middle of the road?
I don't know. I can't really remember. I mean, my mum's always saying, oh, you know, you wrote these poetic things or whatever, but that's parents. They always think that you're like you're special, child. So that doesn't mean anything, you know.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed writing stories, and I really enjoyed writing poetry. I remember we used to do lots of poetry in year 6 when I was at primary school, and that was really fun. And drawing, we used to illustrate the things that we wrote, which was lovely as well. And so I've kept some of those things. And then I really, when in my free time, I used to love drawing comic books. I'd draw characters and create sort of comics with them. Okay. So I was really into telling stories in lots of different ways.
Did you enjoy the subjects like maths and science, or you just not really maths?
No, I wasn't. I was more like a humanities person, so I liked English and history in primary school, and art and design, and also acting and doing like school plays and stuff.
Right. Even though you were shy, you kind of found that acting was okay? Yeah,
I did a school play. I went to 2 different primary schools, and one of them, the teacher who I really loved, she cast me as the lead in the school play, which was Gawain in the Green Knight.
Right.
And it was okay because I had to wear this knight's mask across my face, so it's okay. I could go on stage and like act in front of the whole
but nobody
school
really,
because you're sort of hidden behind a mask. So it was quite fine. And I remember there's only one scene in the play where I had to come on and I didn't have this mask on. So yeah, it was like, and I think she did that on purpose. I think she knew that, she saw that I was a shy kid, but she also saw that, you know, she could instill some confidence in me by putting me in that situation, but making it safe for me. So, you know, I think
the power of teachers.
Yeah.
Very big person thing. Okay, so first of the big questions. What's the point of school? And I think you should speak from, you know, personal experience on that one.
I think, well, I think lots of people think the point of school is to learn lots of information, academic information. And to me, I don't think that's necessarily the point of school. I think the point of school is to learn how to be around other kids and to learn how to sort of create relationships and make friends, and to learn sort of skills in sort of communicating with people and emotional skills.
Like a training ground.
Yeah, learning how to be in real life and learning how to interact with people. And yeah, I think that is probably, to me, I think one of the most important things about school. And to learn to be creative and to learn, you know, what your individual voice is, what you're really good at, and hopefully that the school is going to encourage that and bring that on and let you,
whether that's in a creative way or not. Someone might be way more
they might
methodical
be more
or
academic, but I think you have to have a system that sort of creates opportunities for all those different kinds of kids, no matter what their learning style is, no matter what their personality is, no matter what their interests are, and you've got to kind of
I read some research the other day about how if children, when they're younger, if they're encouraged to sort of develop more horizontally when they're younger, then when they become older and they kind of discover where their particular talents are or where their sort of motivations are, then they sort of rise vertically much quicker if they've had that sort of breadth of experience. Yeah,
and I think you've got to let the kids make mistakes as well and get things wrong, and not just teachers are sometimes difficult at that, but parents too. You know, while you were saying that, I was thinking of like going to an art workshop with my goddaughters, and we had to make like a plasticine pig, and the woman, like, my goddaughter was just like putting the bits together, like, and it was like funny, and it didn't look anything like that we had a drawing that it was supposed to look like. It didn't look anything like the drawing, but she didn't care really, and it looked great. It looked amazing. And then the woman next to me, her son was like doing it, and she was like, "No, you're doing it wrong. It doesn't look like the drawing." Okay. And he was getting really upset, and I just thought, you know, that is not. I just wanted to say to her, like, just leave him alone, let him do what he wants, you know, because that's not helping. And sometimes, if you don't let children make mistakes, or if you don't let them like play creatively with whatever the project is, you're not going to sort of get good results, and they're not going to grow in confidence.
Well, exactly. They've got to have a positive relationship with the kind of work they're doing as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. And so we're on to the 3 big questions. So what would you like to see taught more of in schools, for example? It can be something that's not being taught. It can be something that you know, should be taught more, or whatever that is. So the first one.
So the first one, this was a bit random, so I just came up with a few things that I thought. But the first one that I thought was mindfulness. I actually hate that word, mindfulness. Cause
meditation?
Meditation's a better word, yeah, because mindfulness makes it seem like your mind is full of stuff, information, which I guess it is. But the point of it is just to, you know, take a deep breath and just kind of, you know, just be with your feelings and not be thinking too much.
Is that something that you do yourself?
I try and do it. I'm not right.
Yeah. What's your kind of practice?
At school.
Yeah. Well, we'll get onto that, but what is your current practice? I don't really
have a practice, but, you know, I try and stop. If I'm feeling really stressed, I try and take like 10 minutes out of the day and just sit there and do some breathing and maybe like be in the moment and like check in with my body, like so you just take a deep breath and breathe into your feet and then into your legs and then into your knees and
do you use something to kind of guide you through that, or you just kind of you've developed it as a pattern yourself?
Yeah, sometimes I listen to those meditation apps, like
I had one as well.
There's a few good ones, or sometimes I just do myself.
I found a really good sort of 10-minute one on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's got like a candle on it. It's one of the first ones that comes up, and I always, whenever I do that, I'm glad I've done it afterwards. Yeah. Very glad. I think I don't often do it as much as I should, I think.
No, it's good. And then sometimes if I can't sleep, I do it as well, you know, do some meditation. It's really good to help put you to sleep.
Do you find that your need for meditation comes about at the same time as deadlines for your books?
Yeah, well, you're quite stressed. You kind of like need to take 5 minutes and just like take a deep breath and you know, relax and
get things into perspective.
Yeah, that's why I think it'd be good for kids, especially secondary school kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned before that about habit. You know, the habit of getting into. Why do you wish you'd been taught it in primary school?
I just think you'd have it as a habit for your whole life, like
brushing your teeth.
Yeah, like brushing your teeth or doing a bit of exercise. You know that you have to do something. You know, and if you taught that to kids, then they would have it as a habit from when they first went to school. Like
sort of normalising it for them, so it becomes part of an everyday routine. Yeah, I mean, why do you think? I mean, because it is a big thing now, isn't it? It's become way more popular than. You know, over the last maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 years than it ever has before. Why do you think that is? I
just think because there's such an information overload for people with technology, and there's less and less space to just be by yourself and think. And I think if you don't create that space for yourself, you just become flooded with information and sound and noise and clutter, and you just need to sort of consciously make a space, otherwise you just sort of.
And before kind of, I mean, I was going to talk about social media, I suppose. Before that came, you know, kind of really on the scene, I suppose that space was there. I suppose. Yeah,
I mean, I often think about my childhood and how different it was, you know.
Because you must be overloaded with a lot of social media stuff.
Yeah, I've got social media going on all the time. You know, people are always tweeting me, and
Hashtag Cogheart.
Addicted to it, so you know it's kind of quite difficult to switch it off. And sometimes I do take it off my phone or something, or put the internet blocker, unplug anything to just like stop for a little while.
Yeah, and I mean, I find that, and I find it's amazing about how just self-regulation of like, I will not open it, sometimes doesn't work. Actually, it needs deleting.
You need to physically stop.
Which probably says more about us than anything else, isn't it? But, okay, your next one.
I said reading for pleasure, because I don't think all kids do that, and I don't think all teachers teach that in their classroom. Which I think is sad really, because I think that should be a big part of the curriculum and a big part of what kids learn at school.
And what are they going to get from reading for pleasure?
I think they get to choose what they want to read rather than what the teacher's choosing for them, you know. And I think you can read anything. It's fine. Whatever you're reading is good as long as you're reading. So, you know, you might be reading like football magazines or comic books, or, you know, back of cereal packets. Whatever you're reading is good reading. You know,
Financial Times.
You know, whatever. You know, and people are snotty about certain books or certain authors. And it just doesn't matter, because if the kid's engaged and they love that book and it gets them to read, I think that's really important.
What's quite interesting for me is that I did an English literature degree, and so that was, you know, maybe probably 15, 16 years ago now. Yeah. And since then, the amount of fiction I read is really low. Really? My bookshelf is filled with a lot of non-fiction. Yeah. Which I found sort of quite curious, and
because you got the joy of it beaten out of you.
Yeah, quite possibly. You know, having to read. Yeah. Crikey, what was it, like a book? Like 2 books a week, I think, something like that. And after a while, it was a bit much. But I thought it would have come back by now. But I mean, I do still read fiction, but that's why I think there is a real bias towards fiction and reading for pleasure. People automatically go, well, that means you must read a fiction book. But
no, I think you can read a fact book as well. Yeah, whatever you want to read. You know? I do. This is my plug. I do reading with Beanstalk, which is a charity that does reading with kids in schools, and it's really nice to go into a school and read with kids one-to-one, and because they get to choose the book that they want to read, and you read it with them. And you can have a personal conversation with them about it, and you know, you read at their level, at their speed, and you know, hopefully they get some enjoyment, and they learn to enjoy reading through that process. Yeah. And you know, one of the kids I was reading with, he was not really into fiction books, and we would read like science books and and like Usborne science books and books about nature and biology and how the universe works. Yeah,
I used to really like the Puzzle Adventure series. I thought they were brilliant.
They're great.
Yeah, Agent Arthur and the Stormy Seas, that was a favourite. What about audiobooks, by the way? What do you think of those?
Yeah, I think that's another great way. You know, if you're...
It's not reading though, is it? It's not actually seeing the words.
But I think you're still learning about story, and you're still learning about storytelling. And if you're dyslexic or if you have trouble reading the words, you can have both, and it's a great way to learn things. Another friend of mine was saying, you know, her daughter had real difficulty at school reading the texts, and she would get them on audiobook because she had dyslexia, and so she would get them out. And I think that's a great way for dyslexic kids to, or kids who have difficulty reading, to get into books. Yeah, I mean, the same with teachers reading the books out to them. I think that's another way for them to get into the books.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think I probably prefer listening to them at the moment, but I think, you know, as an adult, there's probably not the same need for me to actually read the words, because I know how they're spelled and all that kind of thing. But maybe for a child, they actually do need to see that printed word and maybe have the audio as well. Maybe that's more important. Okay, and then the third one, which I really like this one, and I'm really glad you chose it. So it is...
emotional intelligence, did I put?
Yeah, you did put it. I'm glad you remembered. So I did a bit of background on it, and there's 5 key elements. The first one being self-awareness, then we've got self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And I know that you picked out empathy and social skills particularly, didn't you? Yeah,
I thought... I know these are all things that kind of you learn in the background at school anyway, but I just think some kids... Like, if you're not a very social kid, or you're maybe more a kid with more difficulties, maybe that's more difficult for you. And I think just one-to-one teaching or you know, conversations or with people helps you as a kid develop those social skills that maybe in a big classroom situation you wouldn't feel comfortable with. And I think just just sort of looking out for those kids who have difficulty with those. I mean, I'm sure that schools do this in a lot of ways, but I just think, yeah, there should be more of it, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I know some schools definitely do it, but I think, you know, time is at a premium more than ever now, and I think a lot of these maybe get sort of swept under the mat a little bit, really.
Again, reading with kids individually and talking to them and getting to know them, you know, it makes me realise, you know, they don't get so much they get a bit of one-to-one time in the classroom, but, you know, to have once a week when you get to read with someone and talk to them. Books are great for that as well, you know, developing empathy and social skills, because you're put into another person's shoes and you get to sort of see how they feel in the story, and you can discuss it in a safe way with somebody. Yeah. So yeah, that's just one-to-one opportunities for kids to learn those skills, I think. Yeah,
and I think because from my notes here I've got that social skills is often around conflict, and I thought that was really interesting because I thought conflict isn't sometimes something I'm not particularly very comfortable with.
Yeah.
But actually, it's such an everyday part of life.
Yeah.
That maybe actually it should be taught in a more explicit way, rather than it just being, oh well, they'll learn over time.
Yeah, or just telling them off for being naughty, for you know, getting into trouble. Maybe, you know, sitting down and discussing. I'm sure that this happens. You know, on some level with teachers, I'm sure that they're very good at kind of getting the kid to really say what's going on and then apologise to the other kid if there's a big argument or whatever. I'm sure that sort of happens, but yeah, I think learning about that explicitly is a great thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely, I would agree with that. And one of the things that was one of the ones that you didn't pick out was motivation. And so I had a quick look into that, and it was about goal setting, and I actually thought that was really important. And I thought, when you're writing books, do you give yourself markers that you've got to hit at certain times? And the reason why I say that is because I watched an interview or two with a couple of authors, and they're always saying, I actually give myself a set amount of time where I have to write, even if I don't think it's any good. I'm plowing through and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, a lot of people would maybe start off in a writing session, not be getting anywhere particularly good, doesn't really feel like it's flowing, but because they have that motivation and they've set that goal, they just don't care, and they just go through and they just steam through. And is that a way that you work, or do you kind of, you know, it's not working, throw your toys out the pram, go and do something else and then come back to it later? How does it work?
I've used all of those strategies. Right. So it just depends on the day and what's... I try and set a word goal for myself, and I try and stick to it. And so I'll try and write, you know, a good day would be like 2,000 words, 2,500. 2,500 words would be a bonanza, excellent day.
Really?
And then like a good day would be, you know, 1,000, 1,500 words. And then an okay day would be 500 words, and then like a really bad day would be 80 words or something. But you just...
That's not a day.
Kind of, you have that goal and you try and stick to it, and you try and get that writing done. And at the moment I'm not on a deadline, so I can kind of faff around and cheat my goals and not hit the goal. But once the deadline's set in stone, then I'll have to really start getting serious and make sure I put that work in. And then people say, you know, it's good to give yourself a little reward at the end of the week if you've hit your goals, even if you haven't hit your goals.
Just give it anyway.
Well done, you've done well, you know.
And what's give us an example of a reward that you give yourself?
Chocolate, muffins, whatever.
Right. Okay. Go out for dinner. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Brilliant. Well, we've had meditation or mindfulness, reading for pleasure, emotional intelligence, and to wrap it up here, what are you currently working on that you're most excited about?
So I've just finished this book, Sky Circus.
How many of those copies are actually alive?
I have no idea. I've got 10 copies, and I've given a few of them out already.
Right.
I don't know how many are in existence. But it comes out in just under 2 weeks, yeah.
Right.
And yeah, I'm really looking forward to people being able to read it, and sort of, I'm hoping that they like it, and I'm hoping that it's a great sort of continuation of an adventure for the characters. So Robert, Lily and Malkin, they basically sort of get kidnapped by this flying circus called the Sky Circus and taken away from their home, and they have to try and make their way back again. And they're helped by some of the characters that work in the circus.
Right.
So this is one of my favourite characters to work in the circus, and she's called Angelique. She is the trapeze artist, and she also has mechanical wings.
Tricky situations.
Yeah, she has mechanical wings that really work, so she can fly in her act as well. And she sort of helps Robert and Lily to, hopefully they might escape from the circus. You'll have to read the book and see.
Yeah, of course.
And
is it
home.
the same illustrator as well?
Yeah, it's the same illustrator, the same designer. So they've done a really fantastic job.
They really have, haven't they?
Making it look nice.
That's beautiful, and it's out on.
It's out on the 4th of October, so in just under 2 weeks.
Wow! Yeah. And will you have the same sort of things for teachers, guided reading stuff?
Yeah, eventually. Usborne are putting together some packs for teachers at the moment. And
nice.
When I've got a bit more time, I'm going to see what they've come up with and hopefully come up with a few things as well.
Perfect. So also the other thing that you were most excited about, which you didn't mention, was the fact that we've been working together on a book trailer project for Reading Zone. Yeah,
you were supposed to prompt me on that, but you didn't. So we'll mention it now. Yeah, with Reading Zone, we've been making a trailer for Cogheart, the first book in the series, and yeah, with some kids from this school, which is Copenhagen Primary School, who came in last week, and we discussed what the story was going to be and made some storyboards and everything, and they were really great fun. So we're going to be shooting it a bit later, and hopefully through the magic of cinema you might be able to see it after this interview.
And they'll be able to get their hands on the actual resources that we're making for it as well. So
yes, there's lots of resources online at Reading Zone, which is readingzone.com, I think, is it?
Yeah, I think you're right, yeah, absolutely. Good plug. Well, thank you very much for coming out. It's been a pleasure.
I'll put the book down. Yeah. Lovely to meet you.
And you as well.